let me turn it over to Al.
Thank you. Well, we have to clap for all of us because this ICAN campaign actually was a grassroots campaign that went against all the, you know, the traditional wisdom, you know, you can't do it. And we did it without the nuclear weapon states, which was amazing, you know. So, I mean, I felt like democracy was breaking out at the United Nations when we got there and they had the negotiations. I've been going to these non-proliferation treaty meetings since 1995. That's the treaty where the 5 nuclear weapon states promised to make good faith efforts to get rid of them. But they're not banned. Now we finally banned it. So we got, as you saw in the movie, to the UN, and they had the negotiations. And when I was at all these NPT meetings, the NGOs, these are the non-governmental organizations, that's what they call us, non-organizations. Anyway, we were always sitting in another room, or they had us they were behind closed doors. This negotiation with the ban treaty, because all the nuclear weapon states had boycotted it, was totally open, and the civil society was interacting with governments, and we got a wonderful result out of this. And it's true that democracy works, and it showed even how the UN can work if you would get rid of the veto and not give them that kind of power where there's an open interaction. So we have the treaty. Right now, actually yesterday, the 24th country ratified it. It was a Caribbean country, I forgot which one. And you know, we're getting a lot of support from Africa, from the Caribbean. We're not getting Europe on, you know. We have Mexico, and Sweden just turned us down, which was, Austria's been great. They're right there. They were hosting meetings. It's funny who does it and who doesn't. But what can we do here? We're here in America now. What are we supposed to be doing? And we actually, some of it was in the film. We have a resolution going through the city council to divest our funds, pension funds, city pension funds, from any manufacturers that are involved in nuclear weapons. And I have a list of, you were going to help me with that, Sally? Yeah. I have a list of things, but my council members on it, it tells you how to look up. The resolution is on this action sheet. It tells you how to look it up. And then you can look online and see if your council person is on, and if not, give them a call. And I had a very successful result with Carlos, my councilman. So I think, and we also worked on Tom's resolution. That was another, well, he's like leading the charge for this Move the Money campaign. And we got our councilman to sign on just this week. So on this sheet that Sally is giving out, there's a whole list of things you could do. So contact your city council member to support legislation on nuclear weapons. There are 2 on the divestment and setting up a study commission. Then there's the Move the Money resolution at the City Council. Then nationally, Eleanor Holmes Norton has put a bill into the House of Representatives calling on the U.S. government to join the ban treaty. And that's another thing that we can do. So that's all on here. And by the way, I went up to, then there's the parliamentary pledge that you saw in the film. They're getting members of parliaments in the nuclear countries, in the NATO countries. They call it the U.S. nuclear umbrella. It's the whole NATO alliance and 3 Pacific nations, Asia, Australia, South Korea, and Japan, that are under the U.S. nuclear deterrent. So they're not willing to sign or negotiate. As a matter of fact, none of them came to the negotiations except one. The Netherlands had an ambassador, they're part of NATO, But that was a grassroots campaign in the Netherlands that they made their government go to the negotiations. So they were the only one that voted no in the final, but they were there. Anyway, yes?
Is that why Sweden turned it down, because they're under the nuclear umbrella?
They're not under the nuclear umbrella, but they're, you know, we're expanding NATO. I can't believe what happened with NATO. I mean, you know, Gorbachev, we promised him it wasn't going to go 1 inch to the east, and now it's right up to Russia's border. And now they're thinking of Sweden, that was always a neutral country. But, you know, they're being very influential. I can't tell you, when we were at the Non-Proliferation Treaty meeting in 1995, that treaty was supposed to expire. It was 25 years old. And they said they're going to come back and see whether it should be renewed. So in 1970, those 5 countries promised good faith efforts for nuclear disarmament, and there were twice as many weapons as when they first signed it. And the US was lobbying for an indefinite, unconditional extension, all the nuclear weapons say. We don't want to make any conditions, and we want it indefinite, we don't want any new expiration date. And of course, we, civil society, was lobbying for more conditions and more promises. And one of the friends that we were working with had spoken to an ambassador, and he said, they've stopped twisting arms. They're now taking out baseball bats and breaking knees. He said, what do you mean? He said, there's somebody on our delegation, it was, I think it was I forgot what country. Their son is applying to Harvard. They're living in America, and they said, your son will never go to Harvard if you don't vote with the US for the, I mean, that's like personal, that's like mafioso stuff. I mean, that's the kind of hold they have to get countries to go against their, but this is our opportunity now here. I went to a town meeting with Carolyn Maloney, my congresswoman. I had the parliamentary pledge from ICAN, which you can, it's on this sheet that Sally gave out. You can print it out, and she absolutely signed it. So Carolyn Maloney, you know, thinks we should get rid of nuclear weapons. These are things that we can do. I mean, we should get more and more people signing on to the Eleanor Holmes Norton resolution. Let me see if I left out anything else. Oh, there's a pledge. There's a very good group that started Nuclear Ban US. They're affiliated with ICAN, but they're looking all through the US. And they have a pledge for presidential candidates. And we should try to get this into the conversation now. This is a good action. You can look at their pledge. It's on this sheet. Ask the presidential candidates to sign the pledge in support of the ban treaty. And what if they come here for a debate, or, you know, go up to them, go up to their aides and say, hey, why aren't you talking about this? Why aren't we supporting the ban treaty? And it's going to happen. It's definitely going to happen. As I said in the film, they quoted me, we never signed the landmines treaty in the US, but we don't make them anymore. We don't use them because it's become so taboo. And one of the best places we're going to see action, 5 NATO states have US nuclear weapons on US bases in their country. I don't know if you know this, we have 1,000 military bases in 80 countries. I mean, what is going on here? But anyway, 5, Germany, Holland, Netherlands, Belgium, and Turkey have nuclear weapons of the US on their bases. And now that the ban treaty has come in and it says they're prohibited, they're illegal, you can't have them, you can't share them, there's grassroots action in, like Germany had a huge demonstration at the Buchel military base saying get rid of the nuclear weapons, you know. So that's going to be another way to stigmatize the weapons from our European friends, even in the NATO alliance. I don't know, anything you want to know that I didn't say?
You don't always know which companies are involved.
There's a fabulous campaign, don'tbankonthebomb.com, and Susie was speaking about it in the film. She's organizing it out of the Netherlands with Pax Christi. And they list every manufacturer and how much money they're getting to make parts for weapons, or they have a complete listing of everything. Don'tbankonthebomb.org. What else? Oh, I want to show you this. This is going around Congress. Warheads to windmills. How to pay for the new Green Deal. This is coming out of, this is on your sheets or at the bottom. But, you know, if we're going to get rid of nuclear weapons and war and the military, you know, the larger divestment, we've got to work with the environmental groups. I mean, they're on the march. We're basically facing two, you know, existential threats. Either we're going to destroy the planet with nuclear weapons or with catastrophic climate change. So this is a very good link up, because they're showing you how much money we're spending for nuclear weapons and what it could do to move us immediately into a safe, green, clean economy. And this is like probably the best thing you can do. Like,
Where do you get it?
it's on your sheet. It's on the,
Print it out.
say that again? You can print it out and look at it, or maybe send for it, maybe they'll mail it to you, I don't know. But it's on the web. Yes.
What in general terms is the substance of the treaty, and what's the enforcement of any incorporated in it?
There's never enforcement. It's the, you know, the countries, look at what happened right now. First of all, it's not just Trump. Clinton started to violate the anti-ballistic missile treaty when we put missiles in Romania, and Bush walked out of it. That was a treaty we had with the Soviet Union since 1972. So who's going to enforce it? I mean, it's got to come from us. We have to enforce it by changing our government. But the treaty itself says you can't have them, you can't use them, can't threaten to use them.
But how do you answer people who say we can't disarm unless we know that all the other countries are disarmed?
Well, we, of course, that's.
So that's why I asked you about enforcement.
Let me tell you something about the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, because I'm an old timer. And part of it was in the film where I said the Kazakhs marched and Gorbachev said they stopped nuclear testing underground. Kennedy wanted to stop it in the atmosphere, all of it, but they wouldn't let him, so they just stopped atmospheric testing and it went underground. And from that time on, we did like another 1,000 tests on the Western Shoshone Holy Land in Nevada. So then when Russia stopped testing, a group of us went to Congress and said, Russia stopped, that was underground testing, why don't we? Oh, you can't trust the Russians. That was the answer we got from Congress. So this Bill DeWin was part of this Lawyers Alliance for Nuclear Arms Control, and he was chair of the New York City Bar Association, and he was from the Dutch DeWins that had the Hudson, you know, like an old line American family. He raised $6 million from his friends, and we went over to Russia, a whole delegation, and spoke to the Russian lawyers and the Russian government and said, we have a team of seismologists. Would you let us put our seismologists around the Kazakh test sites so that we can go back and tell our government that we are verifying your word? And they let us. And we came back to Congress and we said, you don't have to trust the Russians. We're going to verify it. And that's how we stopped nuclear underground tests.
Yeah, but even if you stop testing, by now all the major countries with nuclear stuff know how to make bombs that work. So even if there was no future testing, they could still hide away bombs, which presumably
Let me
would work.
tell you how to make a bomb.
Pardon?
I'll tell you how to make a bomb.
Okay.
This is not like chemical and biological or laboratory in the basement. You need a huge nuclear reactor. There's no way that anybody is going to be enriching their uranium or their plutonium where you don't know about it. I mean, this non-proliferation treaty, all these countries promised not to get the bomb. You know, we promised to give it up. And it had this Faustian bargain. We gave them an inalienable right to peaceful nuclear power. Just think of it, inalienable right, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, peaceful nuclear power. North Korea had their reactor. They walked out of the treaty and made the bomb. That's what we were afraid Iran was going to do, because they also had a reactor. So you're not going to be fooled about it. In other words, if people say they're going to give it up, we went down from 70,000 bombs to 8,000 between us and Russia. We verified it, we know how to do this. If we want to do it, we know how to do it.
But you just said that there's no enforcement, there's no right of inspection.
Well, the enforcement comes from us. If our government is, right now, if our government is walking out of the IMF treaty, right? They're walking out of this treaty that we did. Trump, he's just saying goodbye. We walked out of the Iran. We have to tell our government that we don't want them to do that. We are the enforcers. That's when civil society gets going, like when we got rid of slavery and we got rid of, the women got the vote. We march. We're going to have to organize ourselves. Yeah.
In the Democratic presidential debate, there were only one candidate who took an active stance against nuclear weapons. That's Tulsi, whatever her name is.
Tulsi Gabbard, they never write about her.
From Hawaii, and I think she put a significant, send her emails and let her know that we support her. Also, in terms of bases around the world with nuclear weapons and without, we have 40,000 troops in Germany at maybe $100,000 a person, considering all the tangential support services. Think of the billions of dollars that cost and could be used for building windmills and other peaceful purposes.
Well, that's why we have to work with this Move the Money campaign and get it back, Yeah.
A few words about tactical nuclear weapons and
That's a joke. Tactical nuclear weapons are bigger and more powerful than the weapons that destroyed Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Because the weapon that destroyed Hiroshima and Nagasaki is now a trigger for the hydrogen bomb. I mean, so they're making it sound like it's like a usable thing. It's not usable. It could wipe out a whole city. This is absolutely forbidden. We cannot permit it. And Tulsi, you made a very good point. Tulsi Gabbard is the only one that says, I want to get rid of nuclear weapons and end these regime wars. And the New York Times, I'm not talking about Fox News, the New York Times has Gail Collins, a woman columnist, talking about all the women candidates and never even mentions her. They've blocked her out. I mean, and even analysis of how they treat Bernie in the news. What is this Biden thing? Biden is such a has-been, washed up. They keep promoting him, the whole, lamestream media, I call it. Anyway. Yes?
I just wanted to mention that we met with the ICAN Cities Appeal group, the Move the Money campaign, met with them, and we learned, about the 2 resolutions.
They're on here.
Yeah, and there's ways, if you meet with your city council member, you can also mention the ICAN Cities Appeal, which is to divest from nuclear weapons.
Well, there are 2 resolutions.
There's 2 resolutions.
One of them is for divestment and to support the ban treaty, to call on our government to support the ban treaty. And the second one, this is very unusual for New York because we were always a nuclear weapons-free zone, and they didn't get the Manhattan Project from nowhere. We actually have polluted sites in New York City where they were doing research on the bomb. That was the Manhattan Project. So the other one is to call for nuclear disarmament and nuclear weapons-free zone advisory committee to look at the history and remind us and become informed in New York about what our own nuclear history was.
Yeah, so if you see your city council member or you're working on the Move the Money, also mention the ICAN resolution and the bill. And they said that we're hoping that we can divest from our $200 billion pension fund, the portion of it that's mainly in Boeing and Honeywell. Boeing and Honeywell are where we are pension, if you're a New York City pension holder, that's a good, place to start, call Scott Stringer up or whatever. We want to divest from that. They have about $475 million in Boeing and Honeywell and a few other companies, but those two companies are the big ones.
Sally, as I understand it, there are various pension plans in New York City. And
Five different ones.
one can be used to divest, and the people who are members of unions of any of those pension plans should relate to their particular union.
Yeah, there's your union pensions too. These are the New York City pension funds.
There's another
$200
thing.
million.
There's another thing I didn't mention that I do want to mention. I'm on the board of this fabulous group called World Beyond War. And I mean, we're fighting nuclear weapons, we're fighting divestment from conventional weapons, but we really have to end war on the planet. It's just so 20th century, We haven't won a war since World War II, and we're in all these wars. We're like in 7 wars right now. Yes.
If I may say, there one positive thing in the developments that we now have in the Rome Statute for the International Criminal Court. Also the crime of aggression, meaning when you start a war, you can be brought before that court.
But just notice that Trump announced that we're not going to be subject to the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court. I mean, so when you say who can enforce it, there's no policeman that can come to the door of the White House and say, listen to us, we are the enforcers. It has to come from the bottom up. We have to put the right people in government. We have to make democracy powerful. I have this, I'm really annoyed that when Gore won the popular vote, they blame Ralph Nader, who's an American saint, clean air, clean water, seatbelt. Hillary won against Trump, and they're blaming Putin. Are they ever going to fix the Electoral College? I mean, we got rid of slavery, we got women to vote. The Electoral College is part of that old patriarchal power trip to make sure that the people never get too powerful, and so we have to get rid of the Electoral College so we can, and we should also have instant runoff voting, so you don't have to always be voting for the lesser evil. You can vote for your first choice, and you can have the lesser evil as your second choice, and if your first choice doesn't win, so your vote goes, but you're not going to, be electing the wrong person by voting for who you like, because that limits us. Yeah.
Gerrymandering is only making the situation worse because it, in fact, determines who the Electoral College will vote for.
Right. So, I mean, look, we're all savvy about this, but these are the things, there's never going to be an enforcement. The only enforcers are us, and every now and then it happens, and I think we're on a roll now because we had 100,000 people on Central Park West when they were marching against the NRA, and they were all young, very few that looked like me, and they were registering people to vote online. And this last primary, twice as many people voted as the one before. So, Trump is like an irritant. He's getting people stirred up. It reminds me a little bit of the energy of the 60s right now, what we're seeing now, and we should ride it. And definitely get in touch with your city council person on the nuclear divestment and the military divestment. It's easy. I did it with a phone call. And I did it on Tom's group, Move the Money. You say it's not your group, but I keep personifying it. Anyway, we just called and they signed, so, but if they're at a town meeting, go with these copies. You have the way to get everything, and get the parliamentary pledge. If your member of Congress is doing a town meeting, go up and just give it to them. They'll sign it. I mean, they think it's good to get rid of nuclear weapons. Everybody does. Anything else? Yeah. Okay. Thank you.